VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you, Mr. Morris, and good to have you with us on Crosstalk today. And today it's our privilege to have on the air with us, even though he is on the move from Madison to Milwaukee, Governor Scott Walker. And what a thrill it is to have him here. I know the issues, of course, where a lot of people have questions and are looking for answers. And Governor Walker, I welcome you to our program.
Oh, thanks so much for having me back on. It's really my thrill to be back with you.
Governor, I was going to call you doctor there. Well, you
That's
are,
right.
Your job is to fix up some of the ills of our society, so we'll call you doctor as well.
Exactly. I like it.
Governor, when you took office in January 2010, what was the fiscal shape of the state of Wisconsin?
Well, it was one of the worst we've had in our state's history. We inherited back last January of 2011, a $3.6 billion budget deficit that was literally one of the biggest in our state's history, and per capita, one of the biggest in the country. And so we knew we had to make some tough choices, but we also knew we wanted to avoid the tough choices that fell in place in other states. I mean, look at our neighbor to the south in Illinois. They seem to have made almost all those bad decisions. To balance the budget, you could either raise taxes, which we knew would have a devastating impact on the economy. So we actually lowered the tax burden. In fact, lowered property taxes for the first time in 12 years, which is good for homeowners, retired families, and working families and others, but also small businesses. We knew that other states like Illinois would lay off thousands of public employees, but we wanted to avoid that too. So we avoided the massive layoffs. We knew some states were going to cut things like Medicaid, which, in fact, Illinois is proposing to cut more than $1 billion now. We actually added more than $1.2 billion. That's to fund programs for needy families and children and seniors, things like Badger Care and Family Care. We added more money to Medicaid than any governor in the history of the state has. And we knew that sometimes in the past, Wisconsin had used budget tricks and gimmicks to balance their budget, but we couldn't do that, nor should we, because that's what got us in trouble in the first place. So instead of those four really awful choices, we put in place long-term structural reforms that allowed us to not just balance our state budget, but our local government budgets really for years to come. And I've said repeatedly since we did that, we tried to think more about the next generation in doing that than we did about the next election. And I believe that's what people elect us to do.
Well, now, you signed into law legislation that we now know as Act 10. And recently your office put out a release indicating the fiscal impact of Act 10 on the state of Wisconsin. What's the result of it?
Well, it's amazing. And in fact, we've been tracking for the past year on a website that we have at the state called reforms.wi.gov, reforms.wi.gov. And what we do is we do it for all. We've got a big map on the front of that website where you can click on your county. All 72 counties are up there. So whether it's Milwaukee County or Waukesha County or Dane County or Chippewa County, you name it across the state, people can click on their county and see the documented savings, whether it was documented from newspaper stories or radio stories or TV stories or other documents out there, the documented savings. And we have now got to the point where we've exceeded $1 billion in savings to the taxpayers. This is on top of announcement a couple weeks ago that the actual numbers showed that for the first time in 12 years, property taxes on a median valued home went down in the state. We're fulfilling those promises, and we did it the way we said we'd do it.
Now, our neighbor to the south, of course, the state of Illinois, was also faced with a severe fiscal shortfall and responded with a different course of action. I know you touched a little bit on Illinois, but could you compare your plan with that of Illinois?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a night and day difference. And it's really, in a way, I think helpful for the voters, for the electorate, because that's the choice. Do we go forward? We believe we put in place a positive foundation that we built together to move our state forward, or do we go backwards, not just back in time to what Wisconsin has been prior to our taking over, but even to what we see in Illinois right now, because all the people running against me are all saying they want to invoke the same policies we see today in the state of Illinois. Think about this. Last year, to balance their budget, Illinois raised taxes on individuals 66, almost 67%.
Oh, boy.
They raised them on businesses 46%. A year later, they still have a huge budget problem. Their unemployment rate is 8.8%. That's above the national average. Ours is 6.8%. They've had to, in turn, because their budget is still a problem because jobs and wealth and opportunity left the state with that high unemployment, they in turn now are, the governor's proposing closing 14 state facilities to lead to the layoffs of thousands of public employees. We avoided that. We avoided massive layoffs in the public or the private sector. And they've been raising, in fact, they have one of the biggest increases, or excuse me, one of the biggest cuts, I should say, one of the biggest outright cuts in Medicaid. At the same time, our budget provides one of the biggest increases in Medicaid for things like family care and badger care. And because of their poor choices, their bond rating was just dropped to the worst in the country. Same agency said our bond rating was solid and called our budget credit positive. And their pension system is the worst funded in the United States. It's less than half funded. Our pension system is fully funded. So literally every measure out there, in fact, today, brand new news out there about jobs. Chief Executive Magazine every year runs a survey of employers across the country as to which state's the best and the worst to do business in, to create jobs in. Last year, we moved up faster than any state in the country. We moved from spot number 41 up to spot number 24, and this year we kept moving up to spot number 20. That's 21 spots in the last 2 years, one of the most dynamic turnarounds in the country, and that's a good sign because employers say they're going to add more jobs. The biggest single worry they have, in fact, they quoted someone in this report that mentioned the big fear out there isn't the direction we're headed they like it. The big fear is that things will change and go backwards if the recalls don't go the right way.
Now, your critics, you've got them out there for sure.
Yeah, we do.
Your critics say this. They say, yes, you balanced the budget, but you did it on the backs of state workers. How do you respond to that charge?
Well, a couple different things. Our state budget, and a lot of people don't know this, but almost half of the budget is aid that goes directly back to local schools, and more than half of it is aid that goes in total back to local governments. I was a county executive, obviously, in Milwaukee County for 8 years, and I saw the impact of changes. Because remember, long before I was governor, state under Governor Doe and others cut aid to schools and local governments. What we said is, we need to balance the budget. We need to do it without raising taxes. We need to do it without cuts in Medicaid and massive layoffs we saw in other states this past year. But we also need to do it in a way that's fiscally responsible so that we're not passing on an even greater deficit to our kids. And having worked at the local level for all those years, I knew the best way to do that was to ask public employees at both the state and the local level to pay a little bit more for pension contributions, a little bit more for health care, although arguably much less than what the average middle-class taxpayer is paying. And I remember my brother, a couple years younger than me, he's a banquet manager at a hotel. His wife sells appliances at a department store. They've got two beautiful girls, my nieces. They are a typical middle-class family in this state. And over the past year, he keeps reminding me that he pays more than $800 a month just for his health insurance premium and the little bit he can set aside for his 401k program. Public employees under my plan are paying still a fraction of that. And to me, it makes only sense that when the hardworking taxpayers of our state are making sacrifices to keep people working at their companies, it makes sense that all of us, including me, because I pay a whole lot more for pension and health insurance premiums right now, but it's worth it to keep more state and local employees working.
Now, the teachers union, which is known as WEAC, is stating that you cut $1.6 billion from our public schools, and as a result, they say that school districts are in a fiscal crisis and children are losing opportunities like art and foreign language and music and vocational training. And they also state 4,000 educational jobs were cut this year as a result of budget cuts. Is education really at risk in Wisconsin, or as WEAC is asserting?
No, I mean, this is the absurdity of it. It's interesting. I have two sons, a junior and a senior in high school at Wauwatosa East High School, so I have a vested interest as a parent. I want to make sure my kids and every other kid like them has access to a great education. Both my nieces go to public schools as well. I want to make sure they all have access to great education. But there's been this false choice in years past that either you had to dramatically raise property taxes or you had to hurt your schools, and that's a false choice. We don't do that in the private sector at all. It's not a matter of spending more money. It's a matter of spending our money more wisely. Let me give you a couple examples. One, for years before our reforms, school districts all across the state had to buy their health insurance essentially from just one company. Mm-hmm. The company just happened to be affiliated with the teachers union. Well, our reforms now allow school districts, other than a handful that still have contracts, but the rest of them can now bid out their health insurance, and that has literally brought about tens of millions of dollars worth of savings all across the state. That's money that goes directly in the classroom. That's money that benefits our kids instead of penalizing them. And we saw long before I was governor, there were cuts to public education. Jim Doyle made them, others made them as well. The difference is nobody gave the schools any tools to deal with them. It's another example in Milwaukee. We, as you know, right there in Milwaukee, it's one of our most, unfortunately, one of our more troubled school districts in the state and even in the country. And while there are pockets of great teachers and great schools, many of them are challenged. And so it was ironic 2 years ago, long before I was governor, a new young teacher was named the Outstanding Teacher of the Year. She was the best of all the new teachers across the state of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Exactly the kind of teacher you'd want to have in any school district, but she was in Milwaukee's. You know, what a blessing to have someone like there. About 2 weeks after she was told that, she was then told by MPS that she was being laid off. Well, that's because there were cuts made even before I was governor, and unlike what we've done now, is those cuts forced under collective bargaining, they forced schools to lay off not based on merit, but based on seniority and tenure. So last hired, first fired. Our reforms change all that. We allow school districts to staff based on merit, to pay based on performance. That means we can put the best and the brightest in our classrooms, and we can keep them there long-term. No one who supports what we're doing should ever apologize about education, because what we're doing is about putting money in the classroom, not just into the overhead.
We're coming up on a break here, but there's another question here that says, during your initial campaign for governor, you had stated that your goal of 250,000 private sector jobs being created during your first term. And as we've observed the numbers month by month, there have been both gains and setbacks. And I guess the question is, why is Wisconsin hurting more than other states in this matter of job creation?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You look at the March to March numbers, March of last year to March of this year, there's a reason why we had some challenges there, particularly early on. In March and April and May, people can remember what was happening. Thank goodness it's past now, but you can remember what was happening last spring in our state's capital. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of uncertainty, particularly for small businesses. I know, having held listening sessions all around the state, small business owners more than anything want certainty. They didn't see that around the Capitol last year, and so that was one of the biggest challenges out there.
Governor, we're going to pause for 60 seconds and be right back with you as you're rolling along the highway. Governor Scott Walker with us on Crosstalk today, listening across the nation. I know you've been hearing about this man. We'll be right back.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what causes animals to go extinct?
Chris, any number of causes could bring about the extinction of an animal population. Evolutionists propose a great meteorite impact that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. But this, in their book, was not the greatest animal extinction. That occurred at the end of the Permian period, before the dinosaurs. They claim it was a time of great stability in which animals didn't evolve and then suffered rapid extinction. Remember, their understanding of rapid extinction is different than mine, but we can learn from this that the evidence shows things stay the same. They don't evolve, and that rapid catastrophic processes lay down the fossils. And this is exactly what creationists say. They point to the Great Flood mentioned back in Genesis as a mechanism for animal death and burial.
Thanks, Dr. John. For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, as today we're visiting with Governor Scott Walker, governor of the state of Wisconsin, and a man who's been in the news all over the country because taking some courageous steps in leadership. And we were talking, of course, about the goal of jobs in the private sector and being created even during your first term. My big question is the business community behind you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, even though there were some early concerns about the unrest that was happening from some of the people, many of whom came in from other states last year around the Capitol, the reality is we've turned things around. We're heading in the right direction. We're moving Wisconsin forward. And it's not just something I hear anecdotally when I meet with small businesses, and I meet 3 or 4 times a week. I go out to small businesses, to factories, to farms around our state. But we see that scientifically as well. Let me give you an example of that. Every year our statewide Chamber of Commerce does a survey of job creators in Wisconsin. 2 years ago, before I was governor, when they asked how many employers think that Wisconsin's heading in the right direction, a mere 10% answered yes. That same survey was conducted a few months ago at the beginning of 2012. You know what the number went up to?
What?
94% of our employers believe our state's headed in the right direction. And in fact, a follow-up survey just a few weeks ago said that 87% of those surveyed employers believe that in 2012 yet they're going to add more jobs. But the biggest thing we see in surveys, we see it in the dramatic increase we've had in our Chief Executive Magazine CEO survey rankings, going up to one of the best states in the country to create jobs. And in every one of those cases, the big question mark they mentioned when asked is that they want to add even more, but they're still concerned about what's going to happen in the recall election, because they understand we could either continue down this very forward-thinking path, or we could go backwards to the days of the double-digit tax increases, the billion-dollar budget deficits, and for what was in Wisconsin, record job loss. 150,000 private sector jobs lost in 3 years alone before I took office, and an unemployment rate well above 9%. We've turned that around. We're well below 7% for the first time since 2008. I think the business community, the people who create jobs, appreciate that. They just want to make sure it continues.
On another issue, I want to personally, and I know I speak for thousands, commend you for signing into law 3 pro-life bills just a few weeks ago. Why is the pro-life message important to you?
Well, it's just so fundamental, not only in these pieces of legislation, but as I've said for years, it's that respect for life that defines just, if you have respect for life, you have respect for others, you have respect for your community, you have respect for even those who sometimes differ with you in opinion on other issues. But it all boils down to that fundamental level of respect. My wife, Tonette, and I just celebrated the 20th anniversary last night of the very first date we had, May 1st of 1992, and we were blessed by the next February to be married, and the year after that to have a son, Matthew, and the year after that to have a son, Alexander. And, God has blessed us richly along the way, but I remember almost 19 years ago when we had our very first baby picture of Matthew. We'll be 18 on June 30th. And that was the ultrasound picture we had. And looking at him turned on the side with his hand out such that it was, you could see the 4 digits, and then you could see his thumb in his mouth in the shape of his head. You could see it happening, and you realized even at that early stage, this was a human life. This was our first baby picture of our son Matthew, our gift from God, as we would say in Hebrew. And he's just been such an incredible blessing to us, as has been Alex. And I just can't imagine not wanting to stand up and defend lives like that and make sure we defend them all the way through natural death.
Well, I know there are thousands that are blessed because of that action. Now, you've been attacked for launching what some are calling a war on women. What's your response to that?
I said it's so ridiculous, it's so outrageous. Even the Wisconsin State Journal, a paper from Madison, which, Vic, as you know, Madison is not a very conservative town, but even the Wisconsin State Journal did an editorial last week where they pointed out just what a joke this so-called bumper sticker slogan is, that in our state it is today, and will continue to be as long as I'm governor, against the law for any employer to discriminate against a woman for employment or a promotion, anything else to deal with the workplace. It has been, it continues to be, and it will be as long as I'm the governor. They just love trying to make things out of nothing out there. When it comes to the pro-life legislation we passed, I would argue the things that we did are pro-women. They're pro-patient. They're pro-women. They're making sure that the patients get all the facts at their disposal. And, for those who claim to be about giving people a choice, shouldn't it be an informed choice? Shouldn't it be a choice without pressure from others out there? And to me, I think when people hear the facts, they realize that what we're doing, not only in this, but in the larger context, I mean, we're doing things that lower the property tax burden on families in our state. What better than to give families more of their own money back so that they can support their kids and their family? What better than for any mom or dad to make sure that our kids, that we reduce the amount of deficits that we're passing on through state government, so we're not handing them a charged-up credit card that they can't afford to pay. And, what better than to make sure that we show our kids that moms and dads can appreciate that we're making a better state, that they'll inherit a better state than the one we grew up in. I think those are the issues that people care about. I think the reason why they push these other issues and these bumper sticker slogans is because, unfortunately, a lot of folks on the left don't have a lot going for them on those other issues, and so they want to distract people with things that maybe sound good for a second, but when you pull back everything and you look at the facts, I think, are clearly on our side.
Governor Walker, we, of course, watch with great interest from the media of the mobs in the Capitol and the issues that have been brought up, the people even coming from out of state, launching into efforts, and ultimately it coming here to launching a recall against you in office. In fact, as a matter of fact, the primary is coming up this Tuesday, May the 8th. The general election, of course, is coming up June 5th. What is your response to those who oppose the changes that you brought to our state?
Well, first, two things. One, just in response to what you mentioned about the protest, because I've had it not only at the governor's residence, but my kids still go to school in Wauwatosa. My parents, my dad, a retired minister, and my mother moved in with us in our home in Wauwatosa. We spend as many nights as possible, which is a good chunk of our time, in our home in Wauwatosa when we're on this side of the state. And so we've had, over the last year, protesters bust in, not just in front of the Capitol or the governor's residence. We literally have them bust in front of our home, our actual home. And the reality is, people say, "How do you deal with it? How do you put up with it?" And I said, for every one person who's been obnoxious and over the top and been profane or anything else like that, I mean, they literally have targeted my own teenage kids on Facebook. They've done all sorts of things. The reality is that we found for every one person like that, there's been 9 or 10-fold who've said to me at factories, at farms, at small businesses around the state, that they've said, "Governor, we're praying for you. Me and my family pray for you." Yes, Tonette and I and Matt and Alex, our family, we can't thank people enough for that. That has been so uplifting for us and so powerful for us. We just thank people for that. And for those who maybe at least disagree or think they disagree, maybe without having gotten all the facts, I'd say spend the time to look at not what the attack ads are, but to really look at what's happening. I mean, $1 billion worth of savings, putting the power back in the hands of the taxpayers and not a limited number of special interests, to ultimately make our schools perform better by putting money in the classroom and not just in the overhead and the bureaucracy, and allowing our schools to staff based on merit and pay based on performance. I mean, those are all great things, not just for now, but for years to come. And those are just so extremely positive. And the one other thing I would just say in response to that as well is, I've heard for years from people who claim to be Democrat, Republican, everywhere across the spectrum, I've heard people complain that whether it's at the local level, whether it's at the state government or the federal government in particular, that I've heard people complain for years that, politicians get in office, they say to me, and then they don't have the courage, they don't have the guts to take on the tough issues, to solve the problems that we can all see plain as day. Well, I don't think there's any doubt, if you look at what we've done objectively, that what we set out to do these last 15 months was to take on those tough issues so our kids and our grandkids didn't have to. We thought more about the next generation than we did about the next election. And It would have been easy for me to set that aside. It would have been a lot easier to play the political route, but that wouldn't have fixed things. I said, I plan on winning this election. I'm going to run hard to win this election, but I've never been afraid to lose it. To lose because I knew in the end doing the right thing is always better than worrying about whether you're going to lose or not.
Governor, how can listeners obtain more facts on the issues that we've discussed? Do you have a website?
Yeah, for us, I mentioned the one website that gives the $1 billion with savings is reforms.wi.gov. But on the political side, that gives all our details on our reforms and so forth. It's scottwalker.org. It's scottwalker.org. scottwalker.org.
Governor Walker, not only have you been talking to people in Wisconsin through the entire Wisconsin network, but 90-some radio stations coast to coast. And I know that people with interest are listening and appreciate your answers to all these important questions. I know you're on the road, and we'd just like to say thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure. God bless you and all your listeners.
God bless you, too. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Well, folks, interesting. And the remaining part of our program is to give you a chance to respond. We're coming up here on a break very shortly. But we want to say this, the opportunity to hear directly from people involved. And yes, there are people who have different opinions. And VCY America prepared questions that we feel were pertinent to the issues. And we want to thank the governor's office for allowing us the time to ask those questions. I wish there had been more time. We were limited to 25 minutes. And I'm sure there are many more questions that each and every one of us can ask. But as we take the time to have a public forum, even following the visit, we'll be coming up here shortly on a break. We just want to say how grateful we are for people across the country. And folks, many of you have been following the details of this governor's radical changes to something with, when I say radical, I don't say that in a negative sense. But many times we get used to, well, let's look at the federal picture for a moment. And we see all of the things that are happening, and it looks like we're on a death spiral as the economy is on a dive. And the question is, who's going to pull back on the controls? I'm a pilot, and I know the importance of taking that yoke. And if you see the plane losing altitude, you've got to pull back on the yoke and make sure the plane's in level flight. And from a corporate and national picture, I think all of us are concerned when we see the fiscal situation, the diving of the, if we call it the airplane of state, that is in desperate situations. And the question is, where will this stuff end? Well, how long can a nation face these issues? How long can it be? And we're going to be talking about this and some of the changes. And we're glad to hear from other states as well, because many of you have state issues that you'd like to bring to the light. Some of them are good. Some of them are alarming. It was interesting to have guests on talking about the issue of many things that come before us. But right now I'm going to give you a phone number that you can write down and then join us, because at this moment I'm going to open the phone lines. The phone number is 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. We'll look forward to taking your calls as you join us today on Crosstalk here on the VCY America Radio Network.
Mormonism has been increasing its profile across the United States. Author Ron Rhodes says, although claiming to be Christians, Mormons depart from historical Christianity on a number of essential doctrines. In his book, The 10 Most Important Things You Can Say to a Mormon, Ron Rhodes provides fact-filled, easy-to-understand, and essential information to effectively witness biblical truths to people led astray by this false teaching. In this book, you'll discover tools you need to effectively talk to Mormons about their faith and guide them to the biblical God, the biblical Jesus, and the biblical gospel. You'll understand the Mormons' view of the Bible, the origin of the Book of Mormon, the consequences of not acknowledging the Trinity, and the inadequacy of a gospel of works. To obtain your copy of The 10 Most Important Things You Can Say to a Mormon, send a donation of $12 or more to VCY America, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. To donate by phone, call 1-800-729-9829.
And welcome back to Crosstalk. As we're continuing with our program, the phone lines are jamming here in the studios, and I know many of you from Wisconsin will have comments or questions and reactions to what the governor shared with us today. But calls from out of state are equally welcome. If you can get through, our telephone number again is 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Jim Schneider across the desk here from me. And Jim, a question came in, and maybe you could help us clear up the question of this issue of voting crossover during primary ballots. There's confusion, seems to be among the electorate, and should crossing over or voting, or what happens on that?
Well, Vic, this is certainly an election that impacts everyone in the state of Wisconsin. There's both a Republican primary as well as a Democratic primary. For instance, Governor Walker, who was just on with us, is facing an opponent this coming Tuesday in the election under the party name of Republican. A number of Democrats that are also running. The organization here in our state that governs the elections is a Government Accountability Board, and this is what they have stated in a document here pertaining to crossing party lines. They say because each recall primary is a separate election event, voters may cross parties in the recall primary, but they may still only vote once per office. For example, in the governor's primary, you may only vote for one person, either a Republican or a Democratic candidate. And there are only Democratic primaries for lieutenant governor and state and all this the state senate. There's 4 different senators in the state that are also facing recall. So, in other words, a person can vote either party for the office of governor, but when it comes then to the other offices that will be on the election, they don't have to vote consistent with how they voted for governor. They can cross
either way,
party vote in that regard.
And that's in the primary.
In the primary only. This will be different coming up here in the general election, but it's critical to note that that's the way it is for the primary, and it's important that everybody get out and vote. And Vic, as we have so often said, we need our listeners to become informed and to cast a prayerful vote on Tuesday.
Amen. Thank you, Jim, for clearing that up. It's a good bit that we need to be aware of. And our phone lines are literally jammed here with Wisconsin callers. And but I know that as a national network, hearing this, many of these things can happen in your state as well. And we can learn from one state, watching what's happened in one state or another. And we were just talking about the difference between Illinois and Wisconsin. Right now we're going to go on the phone here to Jackson, Wisconsin, and we're talking with Dawn. And Dawn, you're on the air.
Hi. I thank you, John, for clearing that up, but I still think people are confused. And what people need to understand is that if they are in favor of Governor Walker, they need to vote for him on May 8th, or he may not be on the ballot on June 5th. And people do not understand that. It's buzzing on the Internet, but a lot of people are not aware of this. And the Republican parties are not getting the word out. The word is not getting out.
So repeat again the directive that you're informing us.
That if you want to see his name on the ballot June 5th, you need to vote in the Democratic primary for him on May 8th.
Okay. Thank you very much, Don. Appreciate your call. We're going to go right to Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and talk with Jim. Our phone number, 800-733-9829. Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I hope the governor's listening, but I'm a Teamster, and I work for UPS, and I tell you that about 3/4 of people where I work are all standing with Governor Walker. And if I could just say, there's so much falsehood going around about him. I was making a delivery at a customer, and this guy said how the governor broke the union at this private company. And I said, no, he did not. He didn't do nothing to private sector unions. It was public sector. And this guy was adamant how stuff that he did made the union get broke and where he was working. And I went back there another day and said to another employee how I heard that what Walker did broke the union. And the guy said, we haven't been union since 2005. It was way before Walker was ever elected governor. So, I mean, people are just blatantly lying about him. I just think he's doing a great job, and we'll be praying and voting for him.
Jim, thank you, from Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Appreciate your call.
Yep.
We're going to go to Joseph calling in from Wisconsin. Again, 800-733-9829. Joseph, you're on the air.
Hi. I'd just like to comment that what Governor Walker said without prompting or prodding, and it's so important that he believes in the protection of life from birth or conception to natural death. People are forgetting that our society is turning towards euthanasia to supposedly get rid of our problems. And old people, are just as precious as newborns.
Careful now. You're talking to a guy who's 76.
I know. I'm getting there too.
You bet.
And I want to get to 76 too.
You bet.
So, but it is so important that he said that without any goading, any question. He just offered it right up. So that tells us what his heart really is. I hope he's listening. I think he's great.
Thank you very much for your call, Joseph. Appreciate that. We're going to go to Germantown, Wisconsin, and talk with Claire. Claire, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. I just want to tell the story of a little town called Slinger, Wisconsin. Every single teacher in the high school and the grade school went to the superintendent and took a cut in pay voluntarily. It was in the paper. The superintendent cried. They never left their classrooms. They never deserted their children. And the whole town is happily going along. What I think is everybody just has to sacrifice a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate the call. We've got two lines vacant, 800-733-9829. Let's go to Rebecca in Menominee Falls. Rebecca? Hello?
Hello.
Rebecca, you're on the air. Rebecca, please turn your radio down because you're hearing it delayed. So if you would, please just listen to the phone.
Hello.
Rebecca, Rebecca, I'm going to have to ask you to turn the radio completely off, okay?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to say how refreshing it was, no matter if you agree with Governor Walker's politics or not, how refreshing it was that a political figure would say he was more concerned with doing what is right than winning. That was just very refreshing to me that he would put that out there.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Rebecca. From Menominee Falls, we go to Mauston, Wisconsin, and talk to Mason. Mason is on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, God bless you. I want to say I work for the state of Wisconsin, and I took a $300 hit and paid through Governor Walker. But we still have to vote our Christian beliefs. And if we didn't vote our Christian beliefs, then we're going to get more of the same we had. And, if people got to understand that that's not their money, that's God's money. And if he intended for me to have $300 less a month, then so be it. And God bless Governor Walker, and get out there and vote prayerfully. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mason. Mauston, Wisconsin. We go to Ridgeland, Wisconsin. Talk with Patsy. Patsy, you're on the air.
Hi. Yes, I'm just so thankful too that Governor Walker came on and speak. A lot of people will not come up and speak honestly and truthfully like that before a broad audience, and I commend him for that. And we pray for him as a family. I heard a lot about political ads being on the news and throughout all of our TV stations, and they talk about values. But they don't talk about, they say Wisconsin values, but they never say, what really is the heart of the matter is what's being attacked is biblical values. And that is hard to stand for today, and that is, I think, greatly why he is being attacked today. So I would like to just say also that today in homeschooling today, that my kids and I are discussing the legislative branches and how it was put together, and it really shows how divided our country is, too, because we are not standing with the Lord. And they brought 13 colonies together, years ago, and that took a lot. And we can't even keep our state together because people are veering off from what God is and what God is to us and looking to God. And I think that's the heart of the matter. And we'll keep praying for Governor Walker. And it's not just happening politically. It's across every front, in our homes, in our jobs, and so forth. So,
Patsy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you from Ridgeland, Wisconsin. We go to Jason in Mequon, Wisconsin. Jason, you're on the air. Hello.
Hey, the reforms that Governor Walker has been doing are great. I am a college student at Concordia University up in Mequon, and everything he has been doing for our state, I feel like in the future, as me being a citizen of the state of Wisconsin, that it will be good for us and hopefully keep all the taxes down, and all these reforms he has done are really great for us.
Jason, thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to move right along with an anonymous caller from Wisconsin. And go ahead, Anonymous. You're on the air.
Hello. I'm from McWanago, and I want to encourage Scott Walker and say that we're praying for him also, and especially for his family for what they're enduring. I want to tell something that happened in McWanago that you'll find quite humorous. On Highway 83, some adults were standing with signs anti-Walker, about 4 or 5 adults. I assume they might have been teachers, but I'm not positive about that. And a few minutes later, about 15 students from McWanago High School showed up with signs in favor of Scott Walker, and the adults gave up and took off.
Very interesting.
So the kids even know what's going on. There's one more comment I want to make real quick, is that my family, the one I grew up with, my sisters and my mother are extremely liberal. They want their government perks because a lot of them have government jobs, and they can't see that we are taking severe cuts. My husband has taken a cut in pay, and our insurance is terrible. And they want to continue to tax us while at the same time strangling the private sector. And I don't know where they think the money is going to come from to pay all these perks that they're fighting for. So either they can't add or they think we can't. So I don't know what the problem is. I can't get through to them, and they've quit talking to me over political issues, and this has never happened before.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that from Wisconsin here, Anonymous. We're going to go in just a couple of minutes of break, then we'll pick up on the other side. But here's a caller from outside the state, Jackson, Tennessee. Carol, you're on the air.
Yes, Vic. I'm a transplanted Wisconsinite.
Okay.
And I would like to commend Governor Walker for having the intestinal fortitude to do what he said he would do. And I urge all Wisconsin voters to keep him in office. We need 49 more governors to follow his example.
So much. We appreciate your call, Carol, from Jackson, Tennessee. God bless you. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
We're going to go to Amanda in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And pardon me, we pushed the wrong button. Here we are. Amanda, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
You're on the air, Amanda.
Hi. I'm a law enforcement officer, and so is my husband. And I know that there has been some misconceptions about unions and things that have come out. And I know personally the issues that we've had to deal with as a union. There are many law enforcement officers that are standing with Scott Walker. I don't agree with the recall. I think that it's inappropriate. God puts leaders in position for a reason, and he expects us to pray for those leaders. And I just want to say that I'm very proud of him for standing up for life. And I just pray that God gives him the strength to continue on with what he needs to continue on with, and that he will do the job that God set him out to do.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Law enforcement, business, industry, transportation, hearing from all of you out there. Interesting. We'll be right back after the break. And again, looking forward to your calls at 800-733-9829. This is Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. We're continuing on our list of 20 characteristics of false teachers embraced by the false church. Number 6, false teachers embrace mysticism. Colossians 2:18 says, "Let no one cheat you of your reward, taking delight in false humility and worship of angels." Indeed, that's Gnosticism. That's mysticism. It's this idea that we need to encounter the spiritual world and find out some hidden secrets. This is exactly what the Scripture says don't do. But yet this is what is promoted through the New Age movement. It's promoted in what is called the emergent church or the new spirituality, that you need to have a spiritual experience, encounter the silence, encounter angels or even Jesus But I believe indeed what they're encountering is the demonic world, and they're worshiping angels and seeking this secret information, whereas 2 Timothy 3 tells us the Word of God is complete. We don't need anything else. So the Bible says don't mess around with mysticism or Gnosticism, and that's exactly what false teachers do. Our website, worldviewweekend.com.
And welcome back to Crosstalk as people calling in from all over with reaction to the statements of Governor Scott Walker, who was just online with us, sharing answers to questions that we felt were pertinent, and yes, even talking about those who oppose him, but the opportunity to give an answer. And that's information is what we try to provide on Crosstalk, and the opportunity for hearing, yes, both sides, both issues. Mansfield, Pennsylvania, calling in today, and Ron, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Well, I'm retired. I'm in Pennsylvania, but I want to express my appreciation for having Scott Walker on, because rather than being worried about his reelection, he's doing what's best for the people of Wisconsin. And in my view, when he's through there, he needs to go to Washington, D.C., and I think Judge Napolitano on Fox News ought to be on the Supreme Court so we get good people with their heads on right.
Ron, thank you. From Mansfield, Pennsylvania. Appreciate your call.
You're welcome, brother.
Let's go to Hector in Milwaukee, and on line 4, Hector, you're on the air. Hello, Hector.
My name is Hector.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to the governor. The Hispanic Commerce Chamber is the biggest chamber of commerce here in the state of Wisconsin, and they are all not union. So that's just go to show how big we have expanded here because of the business opportunity. So we just want to know, let the governor know, on my behalf, Hector, that he's doing a great job. We are thankful for all his decisions. Hopefully we can keep him on. I'll be voting on May 8th for him.
Thank you, Hector. Appreciate the call. Okay, just a word. We're going to make a CD of this program, and we'll send it to the governor because many of you wanted him to hear, and I know he's taking he's got interviews all day long. He said 30 or 40 interviews, and whether or not he's listening online, we don't know, but we will make a CD and send it to him for his review so he can hear what you have to say. Tim in West Salem, Wisconsin. Tim, you are on the air.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
I voted for Scott Walker last go-around because he ran on a platform of not business as usual, saying that Madison was broken, and I believe he fulfilled his campaign promise, and that's why I will be voting for him again this next Tuesday, then again in June. And I just wanted to say also is it ate me up that when all those protesters were down in Madison and protesting the governor, I wanted to go there and show my support for the governor. However, I have a job and I have responsibilities. I have 6 kids. I couldn't just get up and leave. However, I do believe that the silent majority, we will speak again, and our turn to speak is when we vote.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. Appreciate the call. From West Salem, we go to West Allis, Wisconsin, and to talk to Brad. Brad, you're on the air.
Hi, Vic. In this state, we've got a different kind of situation than most. In Ecclesiastes 10:16, it says, "Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child." In God's sovereignty, he has blessed this state with an adult. And we got to make sure we get out and vote for him to keep him where he is. He's a very brave man. He does what he says he will do, and he's a godly man because, like you were saying before, he signed those 3 pro-life bills into law, and that may take God's wrath off of us a little bit. But this is somebody we got to keep, and the other side is going to be voting early and often, thanks to the corrupt courts. So we got to make sure we get out there and vote.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate the call. Alice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Alice, your comments.
Yes, I received a letter from friends of Scott Walker a couple of days ago and sent a donation in. Been praying for him. The Lord has sent him, and I know he will keep him. He'll put the angels of the Lord around him and his family. We're proud of him.
Thank you so much, Alice from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And folks calling from all over. Well, right now we got about 3 minutes left. I do have some lines flashing here, and we'll take whatever calls we can squeeze in here in these moments. Try to keep your comments as brief as possible. But this has been an interesting program today. Calls coming in. You heard the governor answering questions and making statements, which we considered a privilege to be able to ask him. He's a busy man, and he was in the car driving from Madison to Milwaukee at the same time. And we're going to New Lisbon right now and talking to Brad, another Brad. New Lisbon, go ahead.
Hi, Vic. Thank you for having Scott Walker on. And I was just thankful that he got this balanced budget because my father retired from the county and fully funded pension. That is very important, even though he doesn't exactly think so. And I'm a union member myself, and I'll be fully supporting him, and hopefully we get our contract settled up here ourselves. I work in a private the telecom industry here, so we might end up on strikes in the new soon, but I might be standing out there with a support Governor Walker picket sign, so hopefully I don't get booed to death,
Well, Brad, thank you from New Lisbon. Thanks for calling. And we're moving right along, very tight on time, Watertown, Wisconsin. And Sean, you're on the air. Shane, I guess it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm a local government worker, and I voted for Walker's first go-around because of what he said he was going to do. He did it. Great. I'll vote for him again, even though that I got some cuts to my pay. But looking at what Bear was going to do when he says he gets in the office, he says he's going to repeal all the pro-life stuff that was passed. Sorry, my pay is not worth even one life. So that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. Jack in Portage, Wisconsin. Jack, you're the last one.
Thank you, sir. I support Governor Walker. I agree with everything he's doing. As far as the demonstrators that are outside of his home, if I understood him correctly, they should not be in a land of liberty. They should belong in prison. That's not demonstrating. That's harassment. I think I've said it. I'll hang up.
Jack, thank you. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody who's taken the time to call today. And it's a unique privilege when you have the governor of the state who will give you a half hour of time, and he graciously did so. And we asked as many questions as we could relating to our economy, to our state, and, yes, even to the issue of the sanctity of human life. These are all things important to Wisconsin. When I think of the rash of abortions that have been carried out since the 80s here in this country, in this state, in some ways we should hang our head in shame for what's gone on. But right now I want to say thank you to every one of you for being a part of the program today. It will be re-aired on the Wisconsin Network or the VCY Network tonight at 8 o'clock. And also you can listen if you want to go to vcyamerica.org and listen live tonight at 8, or you want someone else to hear it. In the meantime, I want to say thank you. Matthew Middlebrook took a rash of calls, our producer today. I want to thank you for joining us on the program we call Crosstalk.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.